In a dusty forward operations tent, she was just the quiet mechanic. Grease-stained hands, chipped nails, barely noticed by the elite SEALs around her. They mocked her appearance, laughed at her being too soft for the field. One even dropped a sarcastic line about manicure appointments. But when a high-ranking officer demanded to see her clearance, she calmly reached into her vest and handed him a single folded slip. That's when they saw it. The Reaper ring gleaming on her finger, unmistakable, deadly. A silence dropped like a hammer. No one moved. The officer stared, then stepped back without a word. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you enjoy stories about hidden strength and unexpected heroes, please consider subscribing to hear more. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on forward operating base, Dagger Point, turning the air into a shimmering haze above the gravel-strewn motor pool. Technical specialist Breslin Brez Tannen wiped sweat from her brow with the back of her wrist, careful not to smear engine grease across her face. Her fingers worked methodically inside the Humvee's damaged engine block, finding the problem by touch as much as sight. "Careful with that! It costs more than you make in a year," came a voice, followed by laughter. Lieutenant Commander Wexford and 3 of his SEAL team members sauntered past, deliberately kicking her toolbox as they passed. Tools clattered across the ground, some disappearing under nearby vehicles. "Should have left the janitor back in her closet," Wexford added, not bothering to lower his voice. The comment earned appreciative chuckles from his men. Breslin didn't look up. She simply withdrew her hands from the engine, wiped them partially clean on a rag tucked into her belt, and began collecting her scattered tools. As she reached under a truck for a socket wrench, her sleeve pulled back, revealing a thin, jagged scar that ran across her wrist before disappearing beneath her uniform. Colonel Harwick strode through the motor pool moments later, clipboard in hand. He nodded respectfully toward Wexford's team, who were now lounging in the shade of a nearby awning. "Commander, I'll need your team ready for briefing at 0600 tomorrow." "Yes, sir. We'll be there." The colonel's gaze swept past Breslin as though she were just another piece of equipment. She straightened up, tools gathered, and returned to her task without a word, her posture perfect, despite appearing to slouch. Her eyes, however, tracked every movement in the motor pool, cataloging faces, weapons, and the subtle tells of those around her. A habit so ingrained she no longer realized she was doing it. Later in the mess hall, Breslin sat alone at the end of a long table, eating quickly and efficiently, her movements economical. Across the room, Wexford's team had claimed a table, their voices carrying as they discussed their upcoming extraction mission. "Intel says there are at least 20 hostiles at the compound," Lieutenant Nash was saying, "but nothing we haven't handled before." "Could be a nice change from babysitting diplomats," another SEAL added. Corporal Tavis Quillen, the youngest of the group and eager to prove himself, rose to get more coffee. On his return, he deliberately took a route that brought him past Breslin's table. His elbow bumped her water glass, sending it spilling across the table and onto her lap. "Oops," he said without sincerity. "Careful there, grease monkey. Though might be good to wash those hands sometime this month." Breslin dabbed at the water with a napkin, her expression unchanged. "Maybe she could use some of your sister's nail polish, Quill," Lieutenant Nash called out. "Cover up those busted fingers." The table of SEALs erupted in laughter. Breslin continued eating, but her eyes moved differently now, scanning the room with practiced precision. She noted the single guard at the mess hall entrance, the partially obscured security camera in the corner, the fact that the kitchen door remained propped open against regulations. Old habits, impossible to break. The next morning found Breslin approaching the operations planning tent, manila folder in hand containing repair requisition forms needing Colonel Harwick's signature. She pushed aside the heavy canvas flap and stepped inside, then froze. Wexford's team stood around a large table covered with maps, satellite photos, and equipment manifests. Colonel Harwick was pointing to a mountain pass, his finger tracing a route while speaking in low tones. Wexford noticed her first. "This is classified, mechanic," he snapped. "Wait outside." Colonel Harwick glanced up, annoyed at the interruption. "Whatever it is can wait, specialist. Clear the tent." Breslin nodded and turned to leave, but not before her gaze swept across the operation plans laid out on the table. Her eyes narrowed fractionally at something she spotted on the map, a route marker through a narrow valley that set off immediate alarm bells in her mind. Outside, she paused, the requisition forms forgotten in her hand. After a moment of internal debate, she tucked the folder under her arm and walked with purpose toward the communications center. That afternoon, Breslin lay underneath a transport vehicle, only her boots visible from outside, when the sound of approaching footsteps made her pause her work. "Hey, mechanic!" It was Corporal Quillen's voice. "Need you to check our transport before tomorrow's mission. Commander's orders." Breslin slid out from under the vehicle, her face impassive as she rose to her feet. Quillen stood with his arms crossed, impatience written across his features. "Which vehicle?" she asked, wiping her hands on a rag. "The modified Humvee, desert camo, the one with the extra armor plating." He jerked his thumb toward the end of the motor pool. As they walked to the vehicle, Breslin carefully constructed her next words. "I heard you're heading east through Serpent Valley." Quillen stopped abruptly. "How'd you know that?" "That's classified information." Breslin shrugged. "Just overheard it. Those transport modifications you requested won't handle well in loose shale. If you're taking the eastern approach, you'll want the reinforced suspension system instead." Suspicion crept into Quillen's expression. "Why so interested in classified info, Grease Monkey?" "Just concerned about vehicle performance in that terrain," she replied, opening the Humvee's hood to begin her inspection. 10 years in Special Forces," Quillen scoffed. "I think we know how to plan a mission without the oil change girl's input." As he walked away, Breslin's hand unconsciously moved to her chest, fingers finding the chain hidden beneath her shirt. She touched what hung from it briefly, dog tags that carried information no one at this base had clearance to read. That evening, the routine of the base was disrupted by the unexpected arrival of Brigadier General Ashford's helicopter. Base personnel scrambled to attention as the general and his security team made their way toward the command center. Colonel Harwick rushed to meet them, surprise evident in his hasty salute. "General Ashford, we weren't expecting you, sir." "Surprise inspection, Colonel," the general replied tersely. "I need to review your operational security protocols immediately." Inside the command center, senior officers were presenting their credentials one by one to Major Devlin, the general's aide. Breslin, who had been delivering maintenance reports, attempted to slip out unnoticed. "You there." Major Devlin's sharp voice cut through the bustle. "I need to see your authorization for this sector." The room quieted. Several heads turned, including those of Wexford's team, who had been called to the command center for the inspection. Smirks appeared on their faces. Expecting to see the mechanic embarrassed or reprimanded, Colonel Harwick looked annoyed. "She's just maintenance staff, Major, Specialist Tannen." "Everyone in this room needs to present credentials," Major Devlin insisted. "No exceptions during a security audit." Breslin stood very still for a moment, then calmly reached into her pocket and produced a single, worn document folded precisely. She stepped forward and handed it to Major Devlin. As she extended her arm, her sleeve pulled back slightly, revealing a distinctive metal band on her ring finger, a dark gray tungsten ring with a single red line etched into its surface. General Ashford, in conversation with Colonel Harwick, glanced over at the exchange. His eyes fell on the ring, and his expression transformed instantly from stern authority to shocked recognition. "Major," he said sharply, "that won't be necessary." Major Devlin had already begun to unfold the document. "Sir, I need to—" "I said that won't be necessary," the general repeated, his tone brooking no argument. "Return Specialist Tannen's documentation immediately." The room had gone completely silent. The SEALs exchanged confused glances, while Colonel Harwick stared at General Ashford, then at Breslin, his face gradually draining of color as understanding dawned. Wexford, sensing the shift in atmosphere but not comprehending why, straightened his posture instinctively. General Ashford approached Breslin, offering a respectful nod that seemed wildly out of proportion for addressing a mere mechanic. "Specialist," he said quietly, "I wasn't aware you were stationed here." "Observer status only, sir," Breslin replied, her voice different now, more assured, authoritative. "Until now." Minutes later, General Ashford had commandeered the colonel's private office. Only 3 people occupied the room: the general, Colonel Harwick, and Breslin. "How long have you been here, Reaper?" asked the general once the door was secured. 3 months, sir. Observer status only, until now. Colonel Harwick looked between them, confusion and concern warring on his face. Would someone tell me what's happening? General Ashford fixed the colonel with a steady gaze. Colonel, you've had a Ghost Protocol operative on your base, and you didn't even know it. Ghost Protocol? Harwick repeated. But those operatives are just rumors. Not rumors, Breslin said quietly. Just classified beyond your access level. The general gestured toward the ring on Breslin's finger. The Reaper ring isn't awarded, Colonel. It's earned, only given to operatives who've completed missions with survival probabilities in the single digits. And returned. Harwick stared at Breslin with new eyes, reassessing everything he thought he knew about the quiet mechanic. Why are you breaking cover now? The general asked her. The SEAL team's mission tomorrow, she replied. They're heading into a trap. The eastern approach through Serpent Valley has been compromised. I've intercepted communications confirming ambush preparations at coordinates that align perfectly with their extraction route. That's impossible, Colonel Harwick protested. That intelligence is top secret. How could the enemy possibly know? There's a leak, Breslin said simply. I've been tracking it for weeks, haven't pinpointed the source yet, but the information is definitely compromised. General Ashford's expression hardened. The leak investigation can wait. What's your assessment of the current mission? If they proceed as planned, total loss of the team is highly probable. I can redirect them through an alternative route I've scouted. It's more technically challenging, but uncompromised. And you're certain of this intel? The general pressed. Breslin met his gaze steadily. Certain enough to break my cover for it. The general nodded once, decision made. Colonel, recall Commander Wexford and his team immediately. Full briefing in 30 minutes. And Colonel, Operative Tannen has operational command for this mission. Harwick's eyes widened. Sir, with all due respect, Commander Wexford is the ranking officer for field operations. His team won't accept taking orders from a what, Colonel? The general asked quietly. Harwick swallowed. From someone they don't know or trust, sir. They'll learn, the general said. Dismissed. The operations planning tent was unusually quiet despite being filled with Wexford's entire SEAL team. They had been recalled urgently from their pre-mission preparations, and now stood staring at their operation maps, which were marked with new intelligence, red X's, and alternative routes drawn in precise, confident strokes. The tent flap opened, and Colonel Harwick entered, followed by General Ashford and Breslin Tannen. The SEALs straightened instinctively for the officers, but exchanged confused glances at the mechanic's presence. Wexford stepped forward. Sir, we were told our mission parameters have changed. That's correct, Commander, Colonel Harwick replied. With all due respect, Wexford said, his gaze shifting to Breslin. Why is maintenance staff in our classified briefing? General Ashford clasped his hands behind his back. Lieutenant Commander Wexford, meet Reaper Operative Tannen. She'll be taking point on your revised extraction. The tent went silent as the words registered. Lieutenant Nash's jaw literally dropped. Corporal Quillen blinked rapidly, as though trying to clear his vision. Wexford's face remained frozen in disbelief. That's not possible, he finally managed. She's a mechanic. No, General Ashford corrected. She's one of the most decorated covert operatives in service. Her cover as a mechanic was her current mission, observing base security protocols and reporting weaknesses. The ring, whispered one of the SEALs. Is that? Yes, the general confirmed. The Reaper ring, given only to Ghost Protocol operatives who've returned from missions with survival odds below 10%. Breslin stepped forward, all pretense of the unassuming mechanic gone. Her posture was now unmistakably military, her eyes sharp and commanding. She pointed to the map. Your original route through the Eastern Valley has been compromised, she explained, her voice carrying an authority that silenced the room. Surveillance indicates at least 30 hostiles positioning for an ambush here, here, and here. Her finger tapped 3 locations along their planned route. They're expecting you. Wexford stared at her, then at the map, professional interest overcoming his shock. How did you get this intel? I have my channels, she answered simply. What matters is that I've plotted an alternative approach through the northern ridge. It's more technically challenging, but uncompromised. The general nodded. Operative Tannen will lead the infiltration team. Commander Wexford, your team will provide support under her tactical command. Wexford's face flushed, but years of discipline kept him from protesting. He simply nodded. Understood, sir. As the briefing continued, Breslin outlined her plan with the precision and confidence of someone who had led countless high-risk operations. The SEALs listened with growing attention, their initial skepticism giving way to professional respect, as they recognized the depth of her tactical knowledge. Lieutenant Nash leaned toward Quillen. Did you see her handling that terrain model? She's memorized every contour of that mountain range. Quillen nodded, still processing the revelation. And here I was, telling her how to do her job. When the briefing concluded, General Ashford pulled Breslin aside. Are you certain about going in with them? Your observation mission was supposed to be non-combat. With respect, sir, I know the terrain better than anyone, and they don't trust me yet. That could be dangerous in the field. The general studied her face. How many extraction missions like this have you run, Reaper? A shadow passed across her eyes. Enough to know what happens when teams don't trust each other. 3 hours before dawn, the staging area buzzed with pre-mission activity. Breslin, now dressed in tactical gear that fit her perfectly, checked her specialized weapons with practiced efficiency. Gone were the grease stains and slouched posture. In their place was a coiled readiness that the SEALs immediately recognized as the mark of an experienced operator. Corporal Quillen approached her awkwardly, his usual cockiness absent. Operative, I said some things. Breslin looked up from her equipment check. Focus on the mission, Corporal. That's all that matters. Yes, ma'am, he replied, the respectful address coming naturally now. Across the staging area, Lieutenant Nash watched Breslin assemble a specialized tactical rifle with the ease of someone who had done it thousands of times. He nudged Wexford, who had been silently observing as well. She's the real deal, Nash muttered. Wexford nodded slowly, then straightened his shoulders and walked over to Breslin. The tension in his approach was evident. A man used to being the alpha operator, now facing someone whose existence challenged everything he thought he knew about military hierarchy. Operative Tannen, he began formally, I'd like your input on our approach to the northern ridge. The terrain is more exposed than we'd prefer. It was a simple request, but from Wexford it represented something significant. Respect. Breslin nodded, setting down her weapon. Let me show you what I have in mind. As dawn approached, the team loaded into the transport vehicles. Breslin took the lead position with Wexford beside her. The rest of the SEALs followed, their earlier mockery replaced by a wary respect. Comms check, Breslin called, adjusting her headset. One by one, the team responded, their voices clear and professional. Mission is a go, she confirmed. Remember, we move fast through the exposed sections, no radio chatter except for emergencies until we reach checkpoint Alpha. As the vehicles pulled out, Colonel Harwick and General Ashford watched from the command center. Will they make it? The colonel asked quietly. The general's eyes remained fixed on the departing convoy. If anyone can get them through, it's her. Who is she really? Harwick pressed. I've never seen credentials cleared that fast, not even for Delta operators. The less you know about Operative Tannen's background, the better you'll sleep at night, Colonel, the general replied. Just be grateful she was here. In the lead vehicle, Breslin studied the terrain ahead, her mind calculating angles, distances, potential threats. Beside her, Wexford broke the silence. The men and I were wondering, he began carefully. The Reaper ring. Is it true what they say, that you only get it after? After missions where survival wasn't expected, she finished for him. Yes. How many? He asked quietly. Breslin kept her eyes on the road. That information is classified, Commander, even from you. The convoy continued into the mountains as the sun began to rise, casting long shadows across the rugged terrain. What awaited them would test even Breslin's experience, but for the first time in months, she felt strangely at peace. No more hiding, no more pretending to be less than she was. The mission had begun. 2 days later, a dust cloud on the horizon announced the return of the mission team. The helicopter touched down on the landing pad, rotors slowly winding down as medical personnel rushed forward. Colonel Harwick stood waiting as the team disembarked. Breslin emerged first, helping a limping Corporal Quillen. The rest of the team followed, exhausted but intact. The mission had clearly faced complications. Quillen's leg was bandaged, Lieutenant Nash had a makeshift dressing on his arm, and all were covered in dust and grime. But they were alive. All of them. Colonel Harwick stepped forward and, to the surprise of those watching, rendered a crisp salute to Breslin first, a complete reversal of his earlier treatment. "Operative Tannen, mission status." "Successful, Colonel," she replied, returning the salute. "Target secured. All personnel recovered." As they walked toward the debriefing area, the SEALs formed a loose protective circle around Breslin, not because she needed protection, but out of a newfound respect. The same men who had mocked her chipped nails days before now moved with deference in her presence. After a few moments of silence, Wexford finally asked the question that had been on his mind since learning her identity. "How many?" Breslin gave him a questioning look. "How many missions to earn that ring?" She paused, considering whether to answer. Around them, the other SEALs slowed, equally curious. "Enough," she said finally, her voice quiet but firm. Quillen spoke up, his usual brashness tempered by new understanding. "You saved my life back there. That sniper had me dead to rights. I never even saw him." "But you saw him," Nash added, looking at Breslin with new eyes. "From 300 meters in fading light." Breslin shrugged slightly. "It's what I'm trained to do." In the debriefing room, General Ashford listened intently as Breslin delivered her report. The operation had indeed been a trap, but her alternative route had allowed the team to approach unseen. They had successfully extracted the high-value target, though not without resistance during extraction. "The intel was solid," she concluded. "The valley was heavily fortified exactly where I indicated. Had the team proceeded with the original plan, they would have been ambushed from 3 sides with minimal cover." General Ashford nodded gravely. "And the leak?" "Still active," Breslin replied. "But I've narrowed it down. Communication specialist, not here on base. Someone at command level with access to mission briefings." The general made a note. "I'll handle it personally. What about your cover?" "Completely blown, obviously. I'll need reassignment." "Already working on it," he assured her. "The observations you made here over the past 3 months have identified 17 critical security vulnerabilities. Impressive work, even for you." Wexford, who had been listening silently, finally spoke. "Permission to speak freely, sir." The general nodded. "I've been leading special operations for 15 years, Wexford said. "Never seen anyone move like Operative Tannen, or think that many steps ahead." He turned to Breslin. "It was an honor to serve under your command." Coming from Wexford, it was the highest possible praise. Later that evening, Breslin sat alone in the mess hall, much as she had many times before, but the atmosphere was different now. No one dared disturb her solitude, though many eyes watched her with newfound curiosity and respect. Colonel Harwick approached her table, hesitating before speaking. "May I join you, Operative?" She gestured to the seat across from her. "Of course, Colonel." He sat stiffly, clearly uncomfortable. "I owe you an apology. The way you were treated on this base, by me, by everyone. It was disrespectful." "That was the point," she replied. "My cover needed to be believable. Being overlooked was part of the job." "Even so," he insisted. "Had I known?" "Had you known, my mission would have been compromised," she interrupted gently. "Your behavior was exactly what I needed to maintain my cover." The colonel looked somewhat relieved but still troubled. "The general tells me you'll be leaving soon." "Tomorrow morning." "May I ask where you're headed?" "You may ask," she said, with the faintest hint of a smile. He nodded, understanding. "Classified, of course. Well, if there's anything you need before your departure." "Actually," Breslin said, "there is one thing. The maintenance bay needs a new socket wrench set. The current one is missing several pieces, and the hydraulic lift has a pressure leak that should be addressed. I've documented it all in my final maintenance report." Colonel Harwick stared at her in disbelief before letting out a surprised laugh. "Even undercover, you actually fixed our vehicles?" "Of course," she replied. "Why waste the opportunity? I'm actually quite good with engines." The next morning found Breslin in the vehicle bay, packing her small bag of tools, her cover blown, Her observation mission complete, new orders had arrived overnight. Somewhere else needed her unique skills. The sound of multiple footsteps made her look up. Wexford's entire SEAL team approached, led by the commander himself. Their usual swagger was replaced by something more measured. Wexford held out a small box. "It's not much, just some decent nail clippers. Figured wherever you're headed next." The gesture, simple as it was, carried significant meaning. Acknowledgement, respect, perhaps even an apology. Breslin accepted the box with a nod. "Thank you, Commander." The team watched as she shouldered her bag. As she turned to leave, Corporal Quillen called out, "Will we ever know what you really did to get that ring?" Breslin stopped and turned back. For the first time since they'd met her, a faint smile crossed her face. "No, and be grateful for that." The SEALs stood in silence as she walked away, understanding now that sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones no one notices until it's too late. As Breslin approached the waiting helicopter, General Ashford met her on the tarmac. "Your new assignment," he said, handing her a sealed envelope. "Eyes only." She accepted it without opening it. "Any particular reason you delivered this personally, sir?" The general hesitated. "I wanted to ask about the mission, the extraction. Wexford's report mentioned something that concerns me." Breslin waited silently. "He said when the building was coming down, you went back in, after the target was secured. That wasn't in the mission parameters." "There was a child," she said simply. "Not in the briefing, not part of any intelligence, just a child who was going to die if someone didn't act." The general studied her face. "That's not protocol, Reaper. You risked yourself, the mission." "Some risks are worth taking, sir." He nodded slowly. "That's why you're the best we have, not just because of what you can do, but because of who you are." He extended his hand. "It's been an honor, Operative Tannen." She shook his hand firmly. "Likewise, sir." As the helicopter lifted off, carrying Breslin to her next assignment, Colonel Harwick joined the general on the tarmac. "She's quite something," the colonel remarked. "You have no idea," the general replied. "I still don't understand," Harwick admitted. "Why hide someone with her abilities as a mechanic? Seems like a waste of valuable skills." The general watched the helicopter disappear over the horizon. "Sometimes the best place to hide is in plain sight, Colonel. People see what they expect to see. A woman with grease on her hands, they see just that, nothing more." "And now?" Harwick asked. "Where does someone like her go next?" "Wherever she's needed most," the general answered. "And God help anyone who underestimates her again." Back in the vehicle bay, the SEALs had returned to their preparations for the next mission, but something had changed in them. Lieutenant Nash carefully picked up a tool that had been left behind, a simple wrench, and placed it reverently back in its proper place. Corporal Quillen noticed and nodded approvingly. "She would have appreciated that." "Strange to think about," Nash mused. "How many times we walked past her, never seeing what was right in front of us." "Makes you wonder," Quillen agreed. "How many others like her are out there, people we pass every day without a second glance, who could be best in the world at what they do," Wexford finished, joining them. "Remember that lesson, gentlemen. Never judge by appearance alone." As the base returned to its normal rhythm, the story of the mechanic with the Reaper ring began to spread, growing with each telling. Some said she had once eliminated an entire enemy compound armed with only a knife. Others claimed she had survived alone for months behind enemy lines. The truth remained classified, known only to those with the highest clearance. But one thing was certain: the next time someone at FOB Dagger Point saw a quiet technician with grease-stained hands, they would look twice, and perhaps wonder. Because sometimes the most extraordinary people are hiding in the most ordinary places, their greatest strength being that no one sees them coming until it's too late.